The void of space had always been silent, but in the year 2746, it had become a battleground. Humanity, once confined to Earth, now stood among the stars, carving out its place in a galaxy that neither welcomed nor feared them, until now. The Zalari Dominion, a vast empire spanning dozens of star systems, had ruled uncontested for centuries. Their advanced technology and sheer numbers crushed opposition before it could rise. Yet, for the first time in recorded history, the unthinkable had happened. A race had refused to kneel. A race had fought back. Humans. At the heart of humanity's defiance stood Admiral Elias Voss, a veteran of countless battles and the architect of Earth's growing military power. His presence on the bridge of the UHS Resolute, a warship built for speed, firepower, and resilience, carried the weight of an entire species. Humanity had come too far, lost too much, to be snuffed out by an alien empire that saw them as little more than an infestation. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Isla Carter, her voice sharp and precise. Scouting probes confirmed Dominion fleet movements near the Zelos Nebula. "They're amassing forces." Voss narrowed his eyes. "They're getting ready for something big." Commander Damian Cole, his second-in-command, stepped forward. "We've hit them hard, Elias. But we both know they won't stop until they wipe us out." That much was true. The Zalari had declared total war. Their emperor had vowed that humanity's resistance would be short-lived and its people ground to dust beneath the weight of galactic history. But humanity had always been underestimated. The doors to the bridge slid open, and in stepped General Serai Nakamura, leader of the Starbound Warriors, an elite force of cybernetically enhanced super-soldiers. Their very existence had changed the tide of the war. Where regular soldiers could falter, these warriors did not. Serai crossed her arms, eyes cold and calculating. "We need to hit them first." Cole raised an eyebrow. "That's suicide. They outnumber us at least 10 to 1. Serai smirked. "They always do. And yet, we're still here." A tense silence filled the bridge. The strategy was clear. The Zalari were preparing for an overwhelming assault, believing they could crush humanity with sheer force. But humanity had something the Zalari lacked: adaptability. A refusal to die quietly. "Commander," Voss said finally, his decision made. "Prepare the fleet. We strike first." The battle for the cosmos had begun. The UHS Resolute cut through the stars, its sleek hull gliding effortlessly through the void. Behind it, a small but formidable fleet of human warships, ranging from heavily armored dreadnoughts to fast, maneuverable destroyers, followed in formation. Each ship was a symbol of humanity's defiance, and their purpose was now clear: disrupt the Zalari's invasion before it could reach Earth. Admiral Voss stood at the command center, watching the holographic display of the system ahead. He was a man used to making impossible decisions, but this felt different. The weight of a species' future rested on their next move. There was no room for failure. "Zelos Nebula in range, Admiral," Lieutenant Carter reported, her fingers flying over her console. "All ships ready for jump." Voss nodded, his voice steady. "Engage." The ships surged forward in unison, and with a deep, resonating hum, the fleet plunged into faster-than-light travel. Moments later, the stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks of light before settling into the eerie calm of the Zelos system. The nebula loomed in the distance, a swirling mass of dust and gas. It was the perfect hiding place for an ambush. "Get us to a safe distance," Voss ordered. "We need eyes on their fleet before we do anything rash." Commander Cole walked over to the viewport, his hand resting on the railing. "Admiral, they've already spotted us, haven't they?" Voss didn't answer immediately, instead watching as the human fleet adjusted course. He trusted Cole's instincts, his mind was sharp, and the man knew how to read the battlefield. But what bothered Voss was the sheer size of the Zalari force. They had tens of thousands of warships scattered throughout the system, more than humanity could ever hope to confront head-on. "That's what they're expecting us to do," Voss muttered. "To charge in blindly, hoping our firepower can overwhelm them." That would be a mistake, Sarai's voice rang out from behind them. The general's presence was undeniable. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a symbol of humanity's fighting spirit, enhanced with cybernetic implants that allowed her to fight with speed and precision that far outmatched any normal human. No mistakes this time, Voss said, turning to her. I want options. What do we have in terms of tactics? Sarai's smile was sharp, her eyes calculating. We fight on our terms, not theirs. We're not facing a simple invasion, this is a war of attrition. We need to hit them where they least expect it. She activated a holographic display showing a map of the Zelos Nebula. The gas clouds offered a natural camouflage, perfect for sneaking past the Zolari's early warning systems. We've already sent covert teams to disrupt their communications, Sarai continued, her fingers tracing the holographic map. But we'll need more. A diversion. Something big. Voss didn't hesitate. We'll give them that. His mind was already working, formulating a plan. They wouldn't engage the full fleet. Instead, they would use decoys, stealth ships, and cyber warfare to sow chaos among the Zolari ranks. It would force the Dominion to split their forces, giving humanity the opportunity to strike where the enemy was weakest. It was a dangerous strategy, but it was their only option. If they could disorient the Zolari and create enough confusion, they could break their momentum and cripple their command structure. Prepare the stealth squadron, Voss ordered. And get those decoys into position. We make our move in 20 minutes. On the bridge, the crew sprang into action. The human fleet would only have one shot at this. If they failed, the Zolari would know exactly where to find them, and they would come with everything. As the fleet quietly repositioned itself, Voss turned his attention to the last piece of the puzzle. The Starbound Warriors. They were humanity's ace in the hole, soldiers augmented beyond human limits. Sarai Nakamura and her team had proven time and again that no enemy was too strong, no force too overwhelming. But even they couldn't do it alone. Voss had a secret weapon, the Gauntlet, a mysterious piece of technology that had been recovered from a long-abandoned alien ruin. Rumors whispered that the Gauntlet could grant its wearer unimaginable power, but its true capabilities remained a mystery. Voss had no choice but to entrust its use to the right hands. And he had a plan for that, too. The moment the plan was set in motion, the tension among the crew aboard the UHS Resolute grew palpable. Every mind was focused on the task at hand, every heartbeat a drumbeat of anticipation. Humanity's fate was about to be decided in a matter of hours, and no one could afford to hesitate. The Stealth Squadron, a fleet of smaller, heavily modified ships designed to slip undetected through enemy lines, had already entered the heart of the Zelos Nebula. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Zolari's advanced sensor network and plant a virus to scramble their systems. They were a decoy, buying time for the rest of the fleet to strike. Admiral, Lieutenant Carter's voice broke the stillness. We're receiving an encrypted transmission from the Starbound Warriors. They're ready. Voss turned his attention to the screen, where the face of General Sarai Nakamura appeared. Her image flickered for a moment before stabilizing, the backdrop behind her a stark contrast to the warmth of the bridge. Admiral, Sarai began, her expression stern, we're in position. The Zolari haven't noticed us yet, but the window is closing. We need to move now. Voss took a deep breath. This was it, the moment they would either rise victorious or be crushed under the weight of the Dominion's power. I'm sending in the decoys, Voss replied, his voice unwavering. We'll have 15 minutes before they realize it's a trick. We're ready, Sarai affirmed. But there's more we need. The Gauntlet. The Gauntlet. A relic of ancient origin, retrieved from a ruin on the outskirts of human space. The artifact had been designed to enhance its wielder's physical and mental abilities, amplifying them to godlike levels. A tool of immeasurable power, but also one shrouded in mystery. Voss looked toward his second-in-command, Commander Damian Cole, who was staring at him with an unspoken question in his eyes. The Gauntlet had been tested before, and its effects were undeniable. But putting it into the hands of one of his own warriors was a calculated risk. The power it offered was dangerous, and potentially uncontrollable. Send it to the warriors. They'll need it to win this, Voss said, turning back to the display. Sarai, I trust you with this. Use it wisely. Sarai's expression softened for the briefest of moments, her steely determination flickering beneath the surface. Understood. We'll handle it. As the transmission cut, Voss turned to Cole. It's time to see if humanity's gamble pays off. Outside the bridge, the human fleet was slowly being enveloped by the nebula, its ships weaving in and out of the thick, swirling clouds of gas and dust. The decoys were positioned and ready, mimicking the signatures of the Resolute and its flagship warships. The moment the Zalari detected the false fleet, they would believe they had successfully trapped humanity. That's when the real assault would begin. But it wouldn't just be a typical fight. Voss knew they had to leverage everything at their disposal, every tactic, every technological edge. They couldn't afford to play by the rules. They had to outthink the Zalari, not just outfight them. Meanwhile, Sarai Nakamura and her elite Starbound Warriors were gearing up for their most dangerous mission yet. Each of them, augmented with cybernetic enhancements and battle armor, was a force of nature in their own right. But with the gauntlet in play, they would become something far more formidable. Sarai herself, standing at the forefront, held the artifact in her hands. The gauntlet pulsed with an eerie blue glow, its metal surface cold and smooth to the touch. Its ancient symbols shimmered as she clenched it, feeling its power surge through her body. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, the weight of her humanity felt far away. The gauntlet was amplifying everything, her reflexes, her strength, her senses. But most of all, it was sharpening her mind, focusing it like never before. You're ready, came the voice of her trusted second-in-command, Captain Kellen Ward. Let's make history, General. Sarai's eyes gleamed with a fierce resolve. For Earth. With a single command, the Starbound Warriors launched from their hidden positions, heading toward the heart of the Zalari fleet. The decoys were already drawing the enemy's attention, and the Zalari's communication network was in disarray, courtesy of humanity's cyber warfare squadron. But Sarai's team wasn't here to distract, they were here to destroy. In the heart of the chaos, Sarai led her team toward the command center of the Dominion's flagship, the Zalari Ascendant. Their target was simple, the Emperor. Taking out the leadership would send the entire fleet into disarray, rendering the rest of the Zalari forces ineffective. As Sarai and her warriors sliced through the defenses, their augmented strength and speed made them virtually unstoppable. The Zalari, stunned by the sudden onslaught, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. Sarai was already inside the Emperor's inner sanctum. End this, she whispered, raising the gauntlet high. The gauntlet pulsed with unimaginable power, and Sarai's mind connected with its alien consciousness. Energy surged through her, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of its abilities. The walls around her began to warp as her senses expanded. She could feel every heartbeat of every Zalari in the building, their every movement as clear as her own. Emperor, she said, her voice reverberating with newfound strength. Your reign ends now. The Zalari Ascendant trembled beneath the might of the Starbound Warriors as they tore through its defenses. The corridors were a chaotic blur of flashing lights, metallic groans, and the sharp sound of boots pounding against the cold floor. Sarai Nakamura moved like a shadow, her augmented senses guiding her every step, the gauntlet glowing at her side with an eerie blue radiance. Her warriors were behind her, their cybernetic limbs and advanced weaponry turning the once imposing Zalari defenses into little more than speed bumps. Each member of the team was a killing machine in their own right, enhanced strength, hyper-reflexes, and precision firepower, but together, they were unstoppable. They reached the Emperor's inner sanctum in record time, the massive door standing before them like the final obstacle to the end of the Dominion's reign. The security systems began to power up, but Sarai's eyes burned with determination, and with a single thought, the gauntlet pulsed with energy. The doors shuddered and buckled under the force of her will before exploding open, revealing the heart of the Emperor's stronghold. The room was a stark contrast to the violence outside. It was regal, with high ceilings adorned in dark metals and crimson banners hanging like the bloodied symbols of an ancient empire. At the far end of the room stood Emperor Zalnoth, his regal form draped in alien armor that seemed to shimmer with an aura of dread. His sharp, reptilian eyes fixed on Sarai as she entered, his lips curling into a slow, cruel smile. "You think you can stop me, human?" His voice echoed through the room, deep and commanding. "I have crushed entire civilizations. What makes you think you are any different?" Sarai's gaze never wavered. The gauntlet's power surged within her, amplifying her strength and mind to levels beyond what any human could comprehend. She could feel the pulse of energy, the rhythm of the universe itself humming in her veins. "What makes us different, Zalnoth," Sarai replied, her voice calm but filled with an undeniable force, "is that we fight for something worth saving." She launched herself forward, her movements faster than the eye could follow. The gauntlet flared with blinding energy as her fist collided with the Emperor's armor. The impact sent shockwaves through the room, the very air crackling with the sheer power behind her strike. But Zalnoth was not to be underestimated. He raised his hand, and with a deep growl, his own energy field flared to life, pushing Sarai back with a force that threatened to break her bones. The Emperor was a force to be reckoned with, an ancient being whose power was not only physical but also rooted in centuries of wisdom and dark technology. Sarai's warriors stormed the room behind her, weapons drawn, but the Emperor's elite guards, towering figures clad in glowing armor, blocked their path. They were formidable opponents, each one a living wall of muscle and weaponry. While her team held off the guards, Sarai focused entirely on Zalnoth. The gauntlet pulsed, and with a roar, she pushed forward once more. Her body moved faster, her strength greater, the weight of the gauntlet's power becoming more than she had ever anticipated. Zalnoth sneered and swung a blade forged from the darkest alloys toward her, but Sarai was already behind him, her movements too quick to track. She struck at the Emperor's weak point, the center of his armor where his power core pulsed faintly. The gauntlet's energy amplified the blow, and the core cracked open, sending an explosion of energy cascading through the room. Zalnoth staggered, but he wasn't finished. His eyes blazed with fury, and he called upon a final, desperate surge of power. The walls of the room trembled as the Emperor summoned an immense psychic force, one that radiated from his body like a collapsing star. But Sarai's eyes glinted with an unshakable determination. She raised the gauntlet once more, the ancient artifact responding to her will as it absorbed the Emperor's psychic wave. Her body screamed under the pressure, but she held her ground, pushing against the oncoming storm of energy. "Not today," Sarai whispered. With a final, decisive movement, Sarai thrust her fist forward, channeling the full might of the gauntlet's power into a single, devastating strike. The room shook with a thunderous roar as the Emperor's form disintegrated before her, his last cry of defiance echoing through the halls of his dying ship. For a moment, there was silence. Then, with a final pulse of the gauntlet's energy, the Zalari Emperor was no more. The remaining Zalari forces outside the sanctum paused, their leaders crushed, their morale shattered. The Dominion had lost its heart. The ripples of the Emperor's death were already spreading through their ranks, a wave of confusion and fear. Sarai stood in the midst of the ruin, her breath heavy, the gauntlet still pulsing in her hand. She could feel the remnants of the Emperor's power swirling in the air around her, but it was already fading, slipping away. "Mission complete," Sarai said, her voice hoarse but resolute. "The Empire falls." The galaxy was in chaos. Sarai Nakamura stood at the center of the Emperor's shattered throne room, her breathing heavy as the gauntlet's power slowly ebbed away. Her eyes glowed faintly, remnants of the gauntlet's energy still coursing through her veins. The Zalari Emperor was dead, his once proud empire crumbling in the wake of his loss. Yet, as Sarai looked around, a deep sense of unease settled in her chest. The battle was far from over. Behind her, her Starbound Warriors were mopping up the remnants of the Zalari's elite guard, their precision and skill ensuring no enemy remained standing. They were formidable, but even now, as they turned to her for guidance, Sarai knew that the true struggle had only just begun. General, Captain Kellen Ward said, approaching with a concerned look. The Zalari fleet is in disarray, but they're not retreating. They're consolidating their forces. Then we have no time to waste, Sarai replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Voss needs to know that we've succeeded. Back aboard the UHS Resolute, Admiral Elias Voss stood at the bridge, his eyes scanning the holographic display of the Zelo system. The decoys had done their job, drawing the Zalari's attention long enough for the Starbound Warriors to strike. Now, the enemy fleet was scattered, their leadership shattered. Victory was within reach, but the Admiral was far from certain. Admiral, Lieutenant Carter reported, her fingers moving swiftly over the controls. The Zalari fleet is losing coordination. Their command systems are in disarray, but their remaining forces are concentrating around their flagship, the Zalari Ascendant. Voss clenched his fists. The flagship was the heart of the Zalari fleet, a symbol of their strength and power. As long as it remained intact, the Dominion could rally. It had to be destroyed. Prepare all ships, Voss said, his voice hardening with resolve. We'll hit them with everything we've got. On the surface of the Zalari Ascendant, chaos reigned. The mighty flagship of the Dominion had become a broken shell of its former self. The crew had fought valiantly, but with their emperor gone, they had no leadership, no direction. The soldiers on the ship were fractured, their morale shattered. They were leaderless and vulnerable, but that didn't make them weak. Their survival instincts would take over, and they would fight to the death. Sarai and her warriors moved swiftly through the ship, clearing the final remnants of Zalari resistance. They had dealt a mortal blow to the Empire, but the war was far from over. Voss's fleet was closing in, and a final, decisive confrontation loomed on the horizon. As Sarai entered the central control room of the Zalari Ascendant, her eyes met the screen displaying the remains of the Zalari command. The galaxy was on the precipice of something massive, and the final blow would have to come from both the warriors on the ground and the fleet in the skies. We're ready to strike, General, Kellen said, coming up beside her. Sarai nodded, her expression steely. We finish this now. The UHS Resolute and its fleet emerged from the nebula like a hammer crashing into the Zalari's battered defenses. A storm of gunfire and explosions erupted across the space above Zelos as the human ships engaged the scattered remnants of the Zalari fleet. But it was no longer a fair fight. The Zalari had lost their emperor, their sense of direction, and now, they faced humanity's full might. The humans fought with a fierce, righteous fury, knowing they had everything to lose and nothing to fear. For every Zalari warship destroyed, there was another human vessel emerging from the chaos, relentless in their pursuit of victory. Voss's voice rang through the communications systems. All ships, focus fire on the Zalari Ascendant. We end this today. The fleet's weapons unleashed a barrage of concentrated firepower, battering the already weakened flagship. But as the Zalari Ascendant began to crumble under the relentless assault, a new threat emerged from the depths of the system. A massive, cloaked ship appeared on the far side of the battlefield. It was larger than any ship humanity had ever encountered, its sleek, dark hull glistening as it moved with eerie precision toward the human fleet. Its weapon systems hummed with deadly intent. Voss's heart sank as he recognized the shape of the ship. It wasn't a Zalari vessel, it was a Dominion dreadnought, a secret weapon that had been kept hidden until now. The true reinforcements had arrived. We've got company, Carter said, her voice tight with disbelief. This ship is enormous. It's heavily armed. Sarai's voice crackled through the comms. Admiral, we've taken care of the flagship. The Zalari are retreating, but they've called for backup. Voss gritted his teeth. We're not backing down. Prepare to engage. We finish this now, humanity's future is on the line. The battle for the galaxy had reached its tipping point. With the destruction of the Zalari Emperor and the disarray among their fleet, humanity had earned its place among the stars. But the fight wasn't over. The Dominion dreadnought was proof of that. They had pushed the Zalari to the edge, but now, they would have to face their greatest challenge yet. Would humanity's resilience and cunning be enough to overcome this final threat, or would they fall to the overwhelming power of the Dominion's secret weapon? The Dominion dreadnought loomed ominously on the outskirts of the battlefield, its massive silhouette cutting through the stars like a dark predator hunting its prey. Its weapons bristled with energy, a sharp contrast to the fragile remains of the Zalari fleet. For the first time since the start of the war, humanity was facing a threat unlike any they had encountered before. Sarai Nakamura's voice came over the comms, calm but unyielding. "Admiral, we've done everything we can to weaken the Zalari forces. But this is different. The dreadnought's armor is reinforced with energy-damping technology. We won't be able to get through with conventional weapons." Voss nodded grimly as he surveyed the situation from the UHS Resolute. Every human ship in the fleet was battling valiantly against the remnants of the Dominion's warships, but the arrival of the dreadnought had turned the tide. The human fleet was now outgunned, outmatched, and outnumbered. The stakes had never been higher. "We don't have time to rethink our strategy," Voss said, his voice cold and determined. "We have one chance to end this. We need to get Sarai close enough to board the dreadnought and disable its power core from the inside. If we can disrupt its energy systems, it will buy us enough time to turn the tide." Meanwhile, aboard the Zalari Ascendant, the Starbound Warriors had finished clearing out the last of the Zalari's resistance. Sarai stood at the forefront of her team, the gauntlet still pulsating faintly with energy. She was exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally, but there was no room for hesitation. The last remnants of the Dominion's power had arrived in the form of the dreadnought. And it was coming for them. "We're going to need a distraction," Sarai muttered to Captain Kellen Ward, who was busy coordinating the team's next move. "The dreadnought's defenses are too strong. We'll never make it to its core without help." Kellen nodded. "The fleet's been fighting a defensive battle for hours, but we've got some of the Zalari's own weapon systems under our control. We'll use them as bait, draw its fire and open a window for you to board." Sarai hesitated for a moment, her mind weighing the risks. "Do it. We don't have a choice." With that, the Starbound Warriors activated the captured Zalari weapon systems, sending a barrage of fire into the dreadnought's shields. It was a desperate move, one that would put them in the line of fire, but it was their only hope of creating the opening Sarai needed to infiltrate the massive ship. As the dreadnought's energy shields flickered under the barrage, Admiral Voss seized the opportunity. "This is it," he said, his voice echoing over the comms. "All ships, initiate evasive maneuvers. Give Sarai the cover she needs to board." The human fleet scattered, a coordinated dance of ships evading the dreadnought's return fire. It was a risky maneuver. One misstep and the entire fleet could be wiped out. But Voss knew they had no other choice. If they didn't disrupt the dreadnought's power core, humanity's hard-won victory would slip through their fingers. Sarai's ship, the Starblade, rocketed through the chaos, cutting through the battlefield like a knife through butter. The Zalari weapon systems they had taken control of fired in quick succession, drawing the dreadnought's attention. Its massive guns fired in retaliation, but Sarai and her crew were ready. They darted between enemy fire, making their way toward the dreadnought's underbelly. "We're almost there," Kellen called from the cockpit, his hands a blur over the controls. "Brace for impact." The ship shuddered as the dreadnought's heavy fire scraped against their shields, but Sarai remained focused. Her mind was razor-sharp, the gauntlet amplifying her senses to a degree that bordered on the supernatural. She could feel the pulse of energy from the dreadnought's core, the heartbeat of the ship, thundering in her chest. It was close. "Engage docking clamps," Sarai ordered. The Starblade connected with the dreadnought's hull with a jarring thud, the magnetic clamps holding them in place. The boarding party quickly suited up, their armor locking into place with a series of mechanical clicks. Sarai led the charge, her gauntlet glowing bright as she punched through the reinforced doors to the dreadnought's interior. The hallway beyond was dark, silent except for the low hum of the ship's engines. But Sarai knew better than to assume the dreadnought was as defenseless as it appeared. She signaled to her team to spread out, taking the lead as they advanced deeper into the ship. They encountered resistance almost immediately. The Dreadnought's elite guard, an army of genetically enhanced soldiers, came rushing toward them. But the Starbound Warriors were ready. In a flash, the hall was filled with the sounds of combat, blades clashing, energy weapons discharging, and the unmistakable hum of the gauntlet's power amplifying every move Sarai made. She moved like a blur, her strikes faster and deadlier than ever before, every blow a devastating combination of precision and strength. Her warriors followed her lead, cutting through the enemy ranks with ruthless efficiency. Within moments, they had cleared a path to the heart of the dreadnought. The ship's core was just ahead, a massive chamber filled with pulsating energy. Sarai's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the overwhelming power radiating from the core, the lifeblood of the dreadnought. "We're here," Sarai said, her voice calm, though her body was screaming for rest. "Let's finish this." The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. Would Sarai and her team be able to destroy the dreadnought's core and bring the Dominion to its knees, or would humanity's final push be thwarted by the unrelenting might of their enemies? The pulse of the dreadnoug's core reverberated through the chamber, each beat like a ticking clock, counting down to humanity's final chance at victory. Sarai Nakamura stood at the center of the vast room, the gauntlet glowing with a fierce blue light, her hand extended toward the heart of the ship. Her breathing was labored, the strain of battle wearing on her, but her resolve was unshakable. She knew this moment would define the fate of the galaxy. "We've come too far to fail now," Sarai muttered, her voice steady despite the weight of the mission. "We end this. Here. Now." The warriors behind her had fought their way through the dreadnought's defenses, leaving a trail of fallen Zalari soldiers in their wake. Kellen Ward stood ready, his rifle aimed down the corridor in case of any last-minute interference. The rest of the team was positioned around her, waiting for the signal to make their final move. Sarai's eyes were locked on the core. It was a technological marvel, a glowing nexus of energy that powered the entire ship. Without it, the dreadnought would be a hulking, dead shell drifting aimlessly in the void. She could feel the power coursing through the air, an energy that seemed almost alive. Her gauntlet thrummed in response, attuned to the core's pulse. The moment had come. With a determined breath, Sarai reached forward, her hand closing around the gauntlet's controls. The blue energy flared brighter, enveloping her arm as the artifact drew on its ancient power. The air seemed to crackle with the tension of the moment. Then, with a single thought, she unleashed the full force of the gauntlet. A beam of energy erupted from her hand, striking the core with the force of a collapsing star. The dreadnought trembled violently, its system screeching as the core overloaded, the intense energy cascading through the ship's veins like wildfire. The walls groaned in protest, and alarms blared as the ship's power began to fail. Sarai staggered, the energy output nearly overwhelming her senses, but she held her ground. The gauntlet's power surged through her, an ancient force that fueled her with a strength no human should possess. For a moment, she felt as if the very stars themselves were in her grasp. But the victory was hard-earned. The dreadnought's shields faltered and finally collapsed, leaving it vulnerable to the relentless barrage from the UHS Resolute and the rest of the human fleet. Voss's voice echoed across the comms, filled with pride and resolve. "We've got it, General. The dreadnought's shields are down. The fleet is moving in for the kill." The final barrage from humanity's fleet hit the dreadnought's hull with devastating precision. The once mighty ship shuddered and broke apart, its massive frame disintegrating in the wake of the human onslaught. As the dreadnought's remains were scattered across the battlefield, the rest of the Dominion fleet turned and fled, their morale crushed by the loss of their most powerful weapon. Victory was within reach, but the war was far from over. The Zalari were retreating in disarray, but they would regroup. No empire could be wiped out in a single day. Still, for the first time in centuries, the Dominion was on the brink of collapse. The empire that had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist was unraveling before the relentless advance of humanity's warriors. Back on the UHS Resolute, Admiral Voss stood before the holomap, his eyes scanning the fractured remnants of the Zalari forces. The battle was over, but the war had shifted in humanity's favor. "We did it," Voss said quietly, a rare smile touching his lips. The Zalari Empire is broken. The galaxy belongs to us now. But Sarai knew better. The Zalari might be defeated, but the true challenge would come in rebuilding a shattered galaxy. Power vacuums would be created, and new factions would rise to take the place of the fallen Dominion. Humanity would have to stand ready, not only to defend their newfound position but to shape the future of the cosmos. The message of humanity's victory spread quickly across the stars. The once distant species who had watched the rise of the Dominion with fear now saw a glimmer of hope. The Starbound Warriors had proven that even the most insurmountable odds could be overcome with courage, unity, and relentless resolve. Humanity was no longer just a young species finding its way. They were now the galaxy's protectors, and the dawn of a new era had begun. The UHS Resolute turned toward the next battle, and the Starbound Warriors followed, their spirits unwavering, ready for whatever came next. There was much to do, much to rebuild, to unite, and to protect. But for the first time, they could breathe easy, knowing that the galaxy was safe in their hands. The universe had witnessed humanity's strength. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of humanity had begun.